Welcome to our afternoon plenary, which is entitled Beyond Robots and Jetpacks, the Next Decade of Engineering. I'm excited to be here with 4 technical leaders from different companies around, different international companies, so they'll be able to talk about those experiences also. So what I'm gonna do is have them each introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their career. To start off, if you haven't seen me up on stage before, my name is Jessica Rannow, and I'm the FY17 president of the Society of Women Engineers. For my paid job, which allows me to do this, is I'm a project manager at AmerisourceBergen. We're a pharmaceutical distributor. So we supply pharmaceuticals to hospitals and pharmacies in the United States. So I will pass it over to Joan to kick off our panelist introductions.
All right, well, thanks, Jessica, and I'm very happy to be here. Amsterdam's a beautiful city, and then just looking out at the audience here and all of these engineers is very inspiring. So my name's Joan Wills. I work at Cummins. We make diesel and natural gas reciprocating engines. I'm specifically responsible for engines that are 38-liter to 91-liter displacement, both diesel and natural gas, and also development of gensets that use those engines, roughly 1 to 3 megawatt in size. My career started, I'm an electrical engineer and have a master's in kind of mechatronics and engine control. I came to Cummins almost 20 years ago now and have had just a wonderful career. I started in feedback controls and diagnostics and was really interested in multiple input, multiple output optimization. Worked on reducing emissions of diesel engines for the first 14 years of my career. Then moved over into strategy, tech strategy, and figuring out what's next after we lower emissions to near zero. How do we differentiate our products? And most recently, in the last 4 years, I've been leading product development for moving our largest engines to North America Tier 4 stringent emission requirements. And then most recently, we merged 2 business units, power generation and large engines. And so now I'm a technical leader in that with teams around the world in UK, in the US, in India, China, and some close work with Japan. During my time at Cummins, I've also had 5 wonderful children, happily married, and I like to stay active and really enjoy life. So happy to be here.
If you haven't noticed, 2 of her kids are here in the audience. That's work-life balance.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuelle Vervoot, and I'm very happy to be here as well in my adoption country, I would say. I work for TE Connectivity for 6 years now. I'm French originally. I live in Netherlands for 27 years. So that's my second country, I would say second home. For the good reason that my husband is Dutch. So that's the... I'm a chemical engineer from background. I studied in France and Belgium and in the Netherlands. I started my career in AMP, actually, which is now TE Connectivity. As a material engineer, I worked for 6 years for AMP, then joined FCI, which is a competitor of AMP. Joined 11 years FCI. I've done quite some different role there in sourcing, in procurement, in project management, and then went back to TE Connectivity 6 years ago, to my first employer. I would say nearly first love. And what is TE Connectivity doing? We are developing and making connectivity solutions, cable assembly, sensors, in all kind of businesses. So that's industrial, that's automotive, that's communication, that's submarine, so very different. And it's a very interesting world as we are dealing with all those different customer applications. And it's a huge company, American-based company, 75,000 people working for this company. When I joined back TE, I was a project manager, and the last 6 years I've had different positions, and now since 2 years I'm the global leader for operational engineering for our cable assembly business in industrial. So my team is across the globe, Mexico, US, Poland, China and Netherlands. So very exciting environments, very challenging, especially with the time zone difference and traveling, but definitely worthwhile. From my personal side, I have 3 kids, And yeah, it's a kind of balancing act between professional life and personal life, but definitely worthwhile to balance it.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aurora Sere-Schneider. I'm happy to be here as well in Amsterdam. I love water. This makes me feel really comfortable. So, about myself. So I'm working at Continental. Continental have different divisions. I'm within the automotive division, actually in corporate part of the Continental. And I'm responsible now for the vehicle system architecture, which 2 years ago we called it future vehicle architecture. But because I like to say that the future was overtaken us, we even changed the name, so it's vehicle system architecture. So this is where I'm now, but I want to start with a start because it really makes sense in my career path. So I'm born in Romania, and after the studies, I studied electronic and telecommunication. And of '96, I came to Germany, and half a year later, I started to work for Ericsson, telecommunication company. I was really lucky because I was one of the first employees starting in a greenfield location for Ericsson in Nuremberg. So I was not only allowed to grow as engineer, but I was as well allowed to be part of a growing location to see what has to be built around it. And I was as well part of the telecommunication in the time when we were saying, what, to send pictures via hand is no possible, never ever. Emails will never work. So 5 years later, I just crossed the street, went to Continental, and I started in a team who were thinking about to become global and start a greenfield. So I raised up my hand and I said, I want to build a greenfield. I know how to do it. I was just 30. They were looking at me like, yes, just stay and wait. And then when I heard that this greenfield location should be in Romania, I was really like, you have to listen to me. So I convinced them, and I had a chance to build up engineering for the business transmission where I was working for in that time in Romania. So 160 engineers in 2 locations there. It was planned to be there 2 years. I was 7.5. A wonderful time for me, for my career, but as well personal, because in that time I got married as well and got 2 children. When I came back to Germany, at first I was working I was leading supplier quality management for the business unit I was coming from, and then I was in business development, but actually the place I'm now, it's really the right one for me, because we are looking in the future. We are looking to new technologies which are really needed in order to manage this autonomous driving, where I really have to think back where people said, yeah, emails via handy will never work. So I'm very sure that we will drive autonomous. On one side, in my team, we are looking to future technologies. On the other side, we are already in the future by designing the right vehicle architecture, looking to the all cross-industry ecosystem, and I really enjoy it. I forgot. I have 2 children. I'm just in here now. I have 2 children, and very, very good husband, and yeah, they are just waiting for me to come home.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sue Oliva. So I work for a company called Juniper Networks. I am the Vice President of Customer Services and Support for Europe, Middle East and Africa. So Juniper Networks, I don't know if any of you have heard of them, apart from having them on some of your backpacks and the publicity here. So Juniper is a California-based company that produces networking technology. So there's about 9,000 employees globally. The annual turnover is about $4 billion. And they produce what you would know as switches, routers, security software. And as our sales and technical teams would tell us today, anyone who had Juniper's Sky ATP technology installed would not have suffered the massive disruption that a lot of companies suffered over last weekend. So as you can imagine, it's an interesting company to be part of because we're providing the infrastructure that allows all of you to do the creative things that you want to do. So I have spent all of my career in the IT industry, even though I arrived there by accident. After university, I studied French and management studies, and then I immediately went to the US with my husband. And I needed a job, any job. This was in a place called Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is not the middle of any particular industry except the U.S. defense industry. And by chance, I ended up in a small, I'm going to say technology, but it was very different in the day. It was dedicated word processors and electronic typewriters. And the person who owned the company was a friend of my husband's, and he agreed to give me a job because I needed a job. And so I discovered I had a natural aptitude for IT. So I've worked in programming, technical support, customer education, and then was given the opportunity to move up into management and leadership roles. So for the last 15 years, I've been in various vice president positions. I did spend a lot of my career in a company called Sun Microsystems, which doesn't exist today, but its legacy to the IT industry is the programming language of Java that you may be familiar with. So I spent many, many years there. I've been lucky to have the opportunity to work in the US, in the UK, and in France, where I'm now located, and had responsibilities for individual countries, plus across Europe as well. The job that I have today, responsible for customer services and support, I have to do the sales side, so I have to bring in the revenues for the services business, which is about $500 million a year. And we have about 400 people in the services organization in Europe. And even though I think we have made advances in getting more females into the IT industry, and I'm delighted to see all of you here, and I would encourage you to keep your interest in engineering and technology. The reality is that in my organization, we still have massive difficulty finding females to work in the industry, and invariably, whether it's an internal meeting, a customer meeting, or a partner meeting, I am the only female in the room still today. So I think we still have a long way to go, which is why I'm delighted to be part of this community.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to bounce it right back to you, Sue, and ask our first question. You were just discussing your leadership career path. Can you talk about maybe one or two of some lessons you've learned along the way?
Yes. So I actually moved into what I would call management at a fairly early age, because I was, at that time, I'd moved back to the UK. I was working for this company called Sun Microsystems, and I was a technical training instructor in a small group of about 6 people. And my boss left to start his own company. And at the time, I was ambitious and I wanted to grow, but I knew nothing about how to operate in a company. What I knew was how to deliver technical training on Unix and programming. When my boss left, I thought, right, somebody has to keep this department running because we have responsibilities to our customers. So I stepped in to run the organization, just thinking, 6 people, thinking, maybe they'll give me the job, but I did nothing to make that happen. And after about 3 months, when the company, I think, had looked and not found anybody else to formally take over management of the organization, they sort of said to me, would you like the job? And I said, yes, thank you very much. And I think they hesitated, nothing to do with me being female, but because I was so young. I was only about 28. And that really allowed me to start in my career. And I discovered that I think I had a natural aptitude for management and leadership as well as the technical side. And so I started to actively build my career. And I had some rules and principles that I learned over time that I think have helped me to sort of move up through the industry. The first one is to be excellent in whatever you do, obviously. To make sure that whatever it is you are signed up to deliver, either individually or as part of a team, to make sure that you do everything possible to deliver an excellent performance, whether it's product or service or whatever it is you are. The second point is you have to make sure that whatever you do is made visible to the organization. And my first real tip would be, it's really nice to think that if I do an excellent job, someone will notice. And then they will pick me up and they will move me into this really brilliant job that I've always been aspiring for, but I never told anybody about. So I realized, because I was ambitious, that if my organization did well, I would have to make sure that people knew about it and that knew that I was part of that success. And so, as well as making sure my organization did well, I spent a lot of time networking, and I spent a lot of time making sure that when my organization achieved something or did something good, I made sure that everybody who was an influencer knew about it. And that sometimes sounds really contrived, or, and it's sometimes difficult to do, but the reality is that there are always people out there looking to take credit for success, and if you don't do it, other people will be claiming successes for what you may have delivered. So you have to be great at your job, but then you have to actively make yourself visible. And that would be my first tip to you, and I wish I'd known that even earlier in my career, is to take credit for your success and make the success visible, because it's also important for the individuals in the team to feel that they're recognized for the job that they actually do. So make yourself visible and be excellent. And the other thing is, your managers can be a huge asset to you in helping you develop your career. So you need to let people know where it is you want to go and what you want to do. Because a lot of opportunities, the managers or the leaders in charge they will have their ears open and they will know what's happening on the ground, and they will want to know which people may have, may be interested in moving into a particular role. So I made sure that my bosses and my network knew that I was interested in new opportunities and actually moving up, because I couldn't assume that they would know that. And then the next thing is, when I was offered opportunities to do exciting things, whether they were job upwards or whether they were sideways, I made a promise to myself that I would always take advantage of every opportunity that was given to me, no matter how frightening it seemed. So very early on in my career, my boss said to me, would you like to move from this little comfortable training organization you're running and take over our technical support organization, which was 25 male engineers who were mostly older than me, known to be very technically competent, probably a little bit arrogant and a bit scary to most people. And I sort of gulped and thought, okay, this chance won't come up again. So I said yes. Read as many management books as I can and sort of leapt into it. But I had to sort of grit my teeth and say, okay, you're going to go there. A little later on, or a bit later on in my career, I was given the opportunity to move to France, where I now live. And my boss came to me and said, we need someone to run the service organization. Would you go and do this? And I sort of gulped and thought, okay, move to Paris. Good side to that, but then I have to uproot my family. It actually didn't occur to me the language piece about it at the time. And I thought, okay, spoke to my family, of course, because at that time I had a husband and 2 children. And I said, would you like to move to Paris? And they thought about it for 10 seconds and went, why would we not want to move to Paris? And then the reality stuck in, which was I had to do my job in a foreign language. And with basic school and university French, that was a huge challenge. But you just have to leap in there and get on with it. And so I went to France, and I made another big decision, which is I said to my teams and the people in France, as of tomorrow, you will only ever speak to me in French, because they all wanted to practice their English. But I knew that unless I learned really, really quickly, there was no way that I would be able to survive and do what I had to do, customer presentations, read contracts, sign documents and everything. And it was really hard. But you would be amazed that if you push yourselves, how much you can actually achieve. So every opportunity, my second piece would be every opportunity that comes up, seriously consider you can do it, because even if there are things that you don't know, we have a massive capability to learn, and that opportunity may not come up again. And then the final thing that I would say, and I think you see it in the management literature today, is you have to be authentic. You have to be yourself. We are in engineering fields that are male-dominated, but that does not mean that we have to take on the persona that is not naturally ours. And that was something I had to learn sort of the hard way. I didn't have to be one of the boys to get on. I had to be myself. The values that I had, the attitude that I had, and I didn't have to go out and be an aggressive male joining in the drinking parties and things like that. I could be myself, and show excellence through my job and use my qualities. So being authentic, because if you try to be something you're not, then people will see through you and you won't achieve.
That's a lot of great advice. Thanks. So I want to ask the same question to Emmanuelle.
Okay, thanks for that. To start with, I would like to give two advice, which is never be afraid to take risk, because this is the best way you can grow. And second one is consider every changes as an opportunity, and don't be afraid for that. That's really for me, at this point of my career and my life, really the lessons learned, which I retain. For me, in my career, there have been two very, let's say, critical periods, critical points, which I want to share with you and how I deal with that to become the person I am now, and it really forms myself. The first one was, I was 21 years old, so that's a long time ago. Was a student at that time, and I decided to move from, I'm French, but to move from France to the Netherlands. And I was still studying. I had 1 more year to do before graduating, but I had to move, obviously for a good reason. But I finished my study in Belgium, French university, or French language university. It was extremely challenging period or year, very difficult. I had to move in a foreign country. I was living in Bordeaux with my parents, so it was really kind of culture shock. I was living together with my husband, my boyfriend at the time. I knew him only from the holidays, so really, kind of, okay, who is this guy? Another shock, I had to change university and to come in Belgium, in Luik, Liège. And I thought, okay, it's chemistry, polymer chemistry. It's Europe, so should be okay. It was quite a level difference, so I had really to catch up and to work really hard to get this degree. On the other hand, that was my decision. No, my parents were like, she's crazy, but I decided to do that, so I was like, no, I'm going to get this degree as well. I'm not going to fail. So I worked like crazy to get this degree. Different culture, different language in the Netherlands, different life. I had to give my life in France to build, my new friends and my new life here. So struggled, felt alone many times, had to really fight very hard to get this damn degree. But at the end, I succeeded, so I got this degree. I worked like crazy, but it's an important one because it formed myself for my future career. And that's what I say is, it was a big change. Well, I think the biggest change in my whole life, but it was really bringing a lot of things back to me at the end. Later on. I mean, this year I didn't see that, but later on I did. And it also opened doors because it remains, it lowered my risk of my fear level, I would say. And I wasn't feeling invincible, but I was definitely taking more risk after that than before that. So that's one very critical part of my life. And the other one is actually at TE, my current company. It's like 5 years ago. I was a project manager at that time. I was working for my manager, a very good relationship with my boss. I discussed with him my career path, my ambition, and for me, I had like, okay, at that time, in like 2 years, 3 years, I will develop myself as a people manager, and that will be about this time frame. So at that time, I was on holidays in skiing with my family, and I got a call from, not from a manager, but from a lady in the US, never heard about her. Said, we are reorganizing the organization, like we are doing quite a lot within TE, and Thomas, my boss, is going to move to the US, and we are proposing this position for yourself, leading a team of 22 people. We're not sure which team it will be. The scope is about this. It will start in 3 months from now. It's about this, and you have 3 days to decide. I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do now? 3 days to decide. So I spent some fresh air in the mountains, try to figure out very quickly. And it was like, jumping and swimming in the sea and just taking risk. And I was thinking for a while, discussing with my husband, obviously, with some good friends, and I said, okay, I'm going to trust the organization. I'm going to trust this lady, which I never heard about. I'm going to do it. And I can tell you it was really scary. the first couple of months, I was like, okay, so what am I doing? Can I do that? I never led a team before. All new engineers, all men. Also very senior, so older than I am. And I was okay, so I'm going to deal with this. And it was the best decision of my life. So I was really out of my comfort zone, but that's where you grow the most, you learn the most. At that time, I asked for help, which is not in my DNA, for sure. That's something which I have difficulty to do, but at that time, I had to. So I added my personal advisory boards, which I learned to build very quickly. And I reached out to those different people. And there was peers, there were leaders in our company, there were my family, my friends. And I got advice, and I got feedback, and I built my confidence level. And that's, in 2 years' time, I built a great team. I've taken really difficult decisions at the same time also to build this team. And again, it was really, the best I did, and I learned enormously, and it was a very good step to what I am doing now. It was a local team, by the way, in the Netherlands. And I learned how to deal with to develop people, which for me is my passion, to really being able to understand engineers. Most of them were engineers, and to deal with their own, ambition, with their own way of thinking. Being an engineer myself definitely helped in that, but being able to be side by side and to get with them along and to really develop them. So it was really a wonderful experience. And now I am a people manager as well on a global basis, so having teams across the globe. It is bringing different challenges, for sure, a different culture, different time zone, but really, learning again different skills and growing and getting this challenge across the way. So really, I would say, don't be afraid, take risks, and what's true, what I'm mentioning is don't be afraid to communicate what you are doing, your success with the organization. Always bring your team with yourself together. It's not a one man or one woman show, definitely. So recognize the people, engage them, bring them with you on your journey, and grow with them.
So we're going to move on to the next question. And Aurora, you had talked about autonomous vehicles, and things you've seen throughout your career that have changed. How people, at one time people didn't even think you could send emails and photos through your phone, and now we can't imagine life without those. So as we talk beyond robots and jetpacks, what are some of the future trends that you see in engineering?
So, I don't think it's a future. I think the future is already here.
True.
So we see very clear that the industries got married. So we cannot say that we have telecommunication and we have automotive and we have medicine industry. And so it's really, if you look to the new use cases which we want to bring on the market, it's everything merged. And this is, on one side, let's say, not a big issue for us because we have a lot of very, let's say, engineers which are really passionate to develop new technologies and to deal with it. So this is something we already know from evolution of being engineering. But what happens, a new parameter to it is the time. So everything changed now much more faster than we were used before. So it makes that we have to communicate with each other. It means cross industries, so supplier with a customer, in phases of our projects which are not, let's say, not so mature like we were used to have it before. So this, you pointed out the part of trust yourself in regards to personal capabilities to make a new step. And now we have to do this as well in the technique. It means we have to trust ourselves to have a discussion with a supplier or with a customer about a technical future technology or a project with very high technical expectations, even if we are not so mature in our thoughts, in our concept. And if now I make the bridge to the women, I think it's not only about that we are too less within the technical field. It's as well about that now it's the capability what a woman can bring with is really needed within the industry. Because a woman is really able to deal with uncertainties, to plan, to replan, to make all this, let's say, impossible to be possible, because we have to do it at home. We did it every day, we do it every day, and these kind of skills are needed. And I think the part you said about we have to talk about ourselves, yes, we have to talk about ourselves. But on the other side, and I think this is one reason why we should appreciate to be here together, is as well to talk about each other. So we get here Woman Known, and we should take these names and these capabilities, what we get today known with us, and if we hear about a job which fits to one or other of us, just to put the people in touch, get the people in touch, and let's make it possible.
I think there's some great points about integration. It really, and Joan, you were also talking a bit about that. You know, you're talking about the zero emission engines, which is a crazy idea. Can you talk a little bit about what you think some of the trends that are shaping the engineering industry?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start with one very specific to what I've spent the last 20 years working on, and then go to some more general impact on the engineering profession. So first, energy. So, you know, being in Amsterdam the last couple days, we're under sea level by a little bit. If you think about global warming, this is a place that cares about that, right? This city doesn't want the sea level to rise. And when I look out the window and I see most people traveling on bicycles, you know, that's going to change. That trend, propagated to other cities around the world, will change what energy sources we use and how they're used. And so I think about that a lot. You know, I work at a company that makes big diesel and natural gas engines, and you know, what will be the sources of energy in the future? What will be the use cases for those? And you know, as engineers, we can solve any of those problems, but we just have to pick which ones we solve and when. And you know, that's really important. The timing of those choices is really important for profitability in publicly traded companies and in large companies. So that's the first specific one. And I think there will be a lot of opportunity as the world generally becomes more aware of global warming and starts to trust that it's really a thing for more countries, for more cities to care about that and start to progress towards more clean energy. So that's the first specific one. Second, I think something you mentioned on merger of industries. I see the same thing in engineering disciplines. So, you know, we have a lot of specialty areas where we have deep expertise in mechanical engineering, electrical, chemical. But more often now, I see for system-level problems that we need to solve, that some of the integrated disciplines where people learn about a problem topic or an industry and then learn pieces of engineering are sometimes better placed to understand how to specify, how to describe a problem. And that is one of the areas I think will become more important, that now we often teach and we work on a problem that's given to us that we solve. But you know, more and more, I think engineers will need to describe the problem and will need to reach out to multiple types of disciplines. I really enjoyed the agronomist lecture from John Deere that I went to this morning, and you know, thinking about food. So I described energy, but where the world gets food and the security of that food source will also change how we solve what kind of engineering problems we're solving. Two other simple ones. One is time and physical place, I think, will become less important. So, you know, there's telepresence, we have cell phones, we're well connected around the world. And if, as engineers, we can start to describe the problem where we want to solve, that less importance of time and place will allow us to better piece together the right experts from around the world to work on that problem. And finally, I think data will seem infinite. There will be so many sources of data, we'll be bombarded by data on a daily basis, and we'll need to be increasingly selective about what we look at, and knowing, again, the problem we're trying to solve, which pieces of data to put together. So I guess those are the key trends that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I already feel overwhelmed by data all the time, so I think most of our audiences too. Emmanuelle, so as we talk about these trends, what are some skills or abilities maybe lacking in the workforce, or things that our audience members could work on so they can be ready for that engineering future?
Sure. So I fully recognize what my colleagues here are mentioning, and looking at what you mentioned about merging industry, about globalization of our environment. Yes, we need to have skills. Technical skills are still remaining very key and even more important. But not only technical skills. You ask for an engineer that is able to communicate across the globe, and this is not straightforward. Being an engineer myself, working with engineers every day, it is not straightforward. So you can be an excellent engineer in optics, very high skill, having a kind of skills which are very unique. And if you're not able to communicate with your peers, but also across the globe with US colleagues or Polish colleagues, you will have a very difficult time, at least with global company like I think most of our companies are. You need to be able to communicate in English, obviously, language, which is definitely a challenge if you look at our colleagues in China, but also in Poland, in Czech Republic, in France. So there are a couple of countries where still it's a challenge, but we're getting more and more there. And but be getting out your comfort zone, out your technical, let's say, head, and communicating is definitely one of the skills which are definitely very important. Combining skills is also very key. That's been mentioned by my colleagues as well. It's what we are looking at for the connectivity is much more integration of technologies. So you can be an excellent mechanical engineer and you can have an excellent electrical engineer besides him, but combining those skills and being flexible in adapting those skills is very critical there as well. So having a mechatronic engineer or having an engineer being able to develop himself in the optical parts. So being, open for developments, developing those different skills than what you have studied at university or at school is very important. So flexibility there, getting out your comfort zone and your box and remaining in an engineering role, but there developing yourself in different area is, I think, very important to grow our industry and to develop our energy technologies or our communication technologies, and we see that in our customer base definitely as well. So that's the flexibility, communication, as well as the technical development on the other side, so that we are able to grow those knowledge and technologies.
Yeah, and I think listening to the career path of everyone on stage too, and mine included, we've all worked for different industries too. That flexibility is really important because you don't know where your career is going to be in 5 years because things change. So, Aurora, could you also answer that question about the things that are future skills or things that you think engineers can use to prepare for the future trends that you talked about?
I really can answer, I'm not sure. But what I see is that we have a big chance to deal with it in a good way if we manage as well, additionally to what you said, to really take the different perspectives by searching for one or other solution. And actually this word and this sentence, consider different perspectives, we talk about it since a very long time. But now really to do it in such a wide way, it's really hard. So especially that we have to manage to have a dialogue with, in order to get these perspectives, like you said, on a level where maybe our know-how is just scratching on a very, let's say, high level, the content of it. And this kind of capabilities, how to trust yourself, to open your mouth, how to listen, how to combine this information, how to make step forwards and admit that was a wrong one and start again. Yeah, I think this is something what we have to get used with it, and as well to do it very fast, because the other ways will take the business and will be much better than we are. And that's why an answer I do not have, but I think what we have, it's already points where we know that we can work on, and we are asked, and we can deal with it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, the engineers, we have to sometimes get out of our engineering brains to take that risk and, move a lot, not analysis paralysis, moving on
especially
to the next thing.
that we had now, so we talk about quality in industry. Quality is one of the biggest issues. And looking now to automotive and autonomous driving and to what happened with Tesla and other the stories, we see what does it mean if you make a mistake and how much does it cost. On the other side, if we look to California, Silicon Valley, we see that it's possible to start again and again and to have creative ideas, and people are open to get them. So we have so wide examples. We just have to decide for ourselves. I really liked the presentation I heard before lunch, that we should not just think about how we want to develop in our career. We should think about how we want to develop as person. And it's very important to think, where do I want to be as person? Where do I want to belong to in this large industry it's now in front of us? Where do I feel comfortable? Where can I be an added value and doesn't cost me much energy, because this is me, and where it's for me a border where maybe I should not stay longer over that border.
Thanks. Actually, I'll have you pass the microphone down to Sue. Kind of continuing on that theme, as we have technical leaders in the room, what can they do to prepare for future technologies and keep accelerating in their careers?
So today in the industry I work in, we struggle to find the number of technical skills that we need to fill the jobs. Even before we start talking about females in that role, we struggle with just finding enough people. And if you listen to what everybody's saying about where technology is going, that demand is just increasing massively. So the first thing that I would say to everybody is we have to do everything we possibly can to encourage a maximum of people to engage and consider technology and engineering as careers. And we can all do that, whether we're leaders or whether we're just, in university at the moment. We all have a role that we can play. And we did an interesting discussion recently with some of the graduates that have joined our company. And we said, what makes a difference to you? What made you consider IT as a career? And they said it was when people came out and talked to us. And in this case, we were talking to females, and they said, when a female came out and told us about what they'd done and their career story and why it was good for them. So they're looking for role models, and role models that can show them that they can succeed in that industry. So the first thing I would say is we have to acknowledge that there is going to be a massive need for engineers, programmers, people in the technology world, and that everything we can do to encourage a maximum of people to come in that industry will be good. And part of the reason I say that as well is there are pressures forcing us in the opposite direction. And so I have, as I said, I have two boys, both of whom have engineering degrees. And I have a daughter who's 15. And my daughter is perfectly capable of doing science and technology, but she is so influenced by social media and her friends to move in another direction that she will not even consider it today, despite the fact that my entire family, an extended family, is engineering and science-based. My daughter says she's going to do fashion and photography, right? And the only reason although time will tell, is I am convinced she is so influenced by her friends and social media today, still, that is something that girls do and is more glamorous than moving into engineering. So I'm on a personal sort of mission here to try and convince her that she could do the opposite. But we have to prevent other people who have the talent to move into the skills that are desperately needed from being sidetracked by social media, friends and things that will convince them that something else is more glamorous, but ultimately it will not be more fulfilling. And the other thing I would say to people is remember that all the research that is done says that if you have a diverse workforce, it will generate a better result. And that's diversity in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of culture. And we have to keep reminding people of that to go out and embrace all of those people, regardless of what their origin is, that could actually contribute, because the business results are actually better for a diverse workforce. And everybody has a tendency to recruit in their own image and to naturally bond with people who are very like them. But the reality is that can influence all of our organizations to underperform. And then the final thing I would say is, in my industry in particular, we're looking for specific technical skills. And there is this fear that young people who've just come out of college may not have all of those skills yet. And so we're continually looking for the nirvana of the perfect engineer who has all the experience we want to fulfill a particular job. So my other request would be prepared to take a chance on the young people who have just come out of college and are graduating from college, because they live in a world and are surrounded by technology that I can't even imagine, what it is like today to do that. And they have a massive capability for skills, a massive capability for learning, and I think will surprise all of us in how quickly they can come on. So we have to put aside our prejudices that says, I must have an experienced engineer who has all of this, because nobody just coming out of college could possibly do this job. And reality proves us different. So in the same way as we've all said, you have to take risks with your personal career, you have to be prepared to take that chance on other people as well. Because in our industry, it is the people that have grown up with the technology that are going to provide the innovation and the skills that are going to continue to advance that technology going forward. So really those three things, which is go out and be ambassadors for getting more people, and particularly more women, into science and technology. Look for the diversity in the groups that will generate a better business result. And then, just if you can be role models for the people that are there to convince them to do that, and then take a risk on the younger people, I think that will help all of us get to where we want to be in whatever the future world is going to look like.
I love that point. I love the saying, see it to be it. And we talked about that yesterday morning too. So, Joan, I'll give you the opportunity to also talk about what you see, things for leaders to think about as we move into the next decade of engineering.
Yeah, thank you. So I think building on what we've already discussed, continued learning. And so, people just out of college will have a lot of new thoughts. And so anyone that already is out of college, things will change. And so just continuing to learn throughout our lives. I did some analysis on degrees and what electrical, mechanical, chemical, biomedical. And it's actually only about a year and a half of that time that's different. And if you think about a 30 or 40-year career, what does that matter? We can learn much more than that year and a half throughout our careers. So keep learning. Again, we talked about leaning into challenge, and so I think of it as running towards and not away from the toughest problems, because solving really meaningful, complex problems multiple times over a career and starting to be trusted to, okay, that problem's really hard. I should go to that person, right? I should go to Joan. Is something that I've worked on and done. And then lastly, and this one maybe is a little bit different than what we've talked about, is take time to really be introspective and define what success means to you. And so I firmly believe we can all be successful. You can have everything, but you just have to define what everything means, right? So I have started and have probably over the past 7 or 8 years every December or January, usually during a long international flight, I write down my goals. So I brought a couple just for example to say, you know, what does success mean and what am I going to do this year? So one is go to at least 2 home sporting events for each of my 5 children. Second, successful launch of our North America Tier 4 engine products into the mining and oil and gas space. I started working on that 12 years ago and really want those products to be a success. Third, run at least 4 times a week and do yoga for at least an hour, and that's sort of my time and staying focused and staying mentally sharp. Achieving and working towards gender balance in our global technical organization. And you heard some about that from Jonathan Wood. I'm also part of that technical women leadership panel and have been doing a number of different projects. And finally, I forget what the last one was. Give me a second. Be a leader. So that might sound simple, but I've been working towards being a leader for many years, and so this year I'm trying to just calm down and say, okay, you already are a leader. So things like this, thanks for the opportunity, make me feel that way. So,
thanks. So we have time for 1 or 2 audience questions. We have some mics out in the audience. They stunned everyone to silence. We got one up here. Yep, she's coming around with the microphone.
Not really formed the question yet, but so give me a second. Some of the sessions we've had today and yesterday have talked about disruptive technology, stuff that has just blown the industry apart. One of my favorite ones to talk about is the iPhone. If you had to make a prediction, what do you think would be like an up-and-coming, possibly disruptive or explosive technology that's just really going to send one of the industries that maybe you work in, just not necessarily into a tailspin, but it's just going to be one of those things where you could be able to look back at 10 years and go, that was the defining moment when everything changed? Did I stun you guys into silence this time?
I can think of one, but
yeah. Well, I was thinking of one example we've been working on, and I mentioned global warming and what we need to do. So one of my favorite projects that some members of the audience have worked on recently is the UK has committed to decommissioning all of their coal-burning power plants. And so we've been able to, so there's a lot of offshore wind going in, so lots of opportunity in that type of space, but we've been able to then put in reciprocating natural gas engines to firm the wind. And so I think watching the time and place of electricity generation and that move towards trying to a sustainable planet over time, there will be a number of shifts there, and one of them is in the density of energy storage. I took a Tesla cab to my hotel from the airport here, and it was really nice, and again, cleaner city here, especially I think the grid is not sourced by coal-burning power plants in Amsterdam. So I think that's a space to watch. There'll be changes in the use and source of energy.
If I may add on this one, I think what is currently happening in the transportation world, automotive world, is extremely, I think, exciting and will transform the world as well. Not only talking about Tesla, but talking about the flying car. And actually, in the Netherlands, there is a company working on this and putting this on the market as we speak. Some relative of mine is working for this company, so I'm not involved, but I know quite well what it takes as energy, working on this for like the past 6-7 years on this project, funding, getting funding from everywhere in the world, and getting this specific, very special car on the market. I think for me, it's really like innovation. It's really being, completely different, breaking rules which are already existing, or not rules but laws, creating new ones and putting this on the market. So I think that's an example, like you were mentioning.
I would like to add as well something. So I really like your question with the iPhone, because 3 years ago we had an internal project where we said how would look the vehicle of tomorrow, and then we made a picture of an iPhone with wheels. So it's really, we dream to have a flying car going under the water and being small and big and depending what we just wish to transform. And for this we need transforming technologies. So we do not need just a hardware which is capable to process all the information. We do not need just a communication to be connected, but we need as well to have the right technologies within the vehicle as well outside. We need intelligent networks that the vehicle can reconfigure itself, that the vehicle can learn over its own lifetime. So we need artificial intelligence. We need to be able to make these updates into the vehicle. We need to assure that in the same time, everything what's changed still give to the passengers or to the goods which are transported the necessary security and safety. And the point is that it's not just one technology. There are a lot of technologies which have to be together, and the roadmaps of them have to fit in order to take the biggest advantage at the right time out of them.
I'm beyond excited to not have to drive myself anymore, but it's when you start thinking about there's so many different areas it's going to impact, from the road infrastructure to having 5G so the cars can communicate, and the ethics behind the designs of the vehicles, and just it's a really exciting area that there's going to be so many engineers involved in, and it applies to other industries than just the cars on the road. I mean, between mining and farming, and I mean, just it can apply to everything. So yeah, definitely, I think it's going to be an exciting next generation of engineering. So I'd like to thank our panelists today. If everyone could give them a round of applause.